Tonight I want to talk to you guys about sprint intervals and how that is beneficial for the endurance athlete to build overall endurance. First, I want to talk about a few housekeeping things. Spicy Saturday, that workout, I was taking a look at it tonight. I talked to Justin about these doozies that he's riding, but let's go over that real quick. So we've got 10 rounds for time tomorrow morning. So what that's going to be is you're trying to get through 10 rounds of these two movements as fast as you can. You've got 10 power cleans and 10 burpee over the bars. So power cleans are taking the bar from the floor all the way up to your shoulder. As you get into the later rounds, you're going to want to make sure that you're shooting your elbows through and you're hinging at the hip and driving your hips through, so that way you're using a lot of momentum from the hips to get that bar up, and it's not all arms getting that bar up to your shoulder. Otherwise, you're going to smoke your shoulders. The scaled movements, you got 5 rounds of those 2 movements, or you can do 10 rounds of 5 movements of each of those. You can also scale back the weight. You'll see all that stuff on the post tomorrow morning. Tag us in those posts. We'd like seeing you guys do the workout and get after it tomorrow morning. The last thing is we've got our last seminar here at the end of the year. I believe it's December 20th at, I want to say 7:30 Central Time. I could be wrong on that, or 7 o'clock Central Time, one of the two. But it's about goal writing. It's about getting ready for the 2025 year. Be sure to hop on that. It's totally free to you guys. If you can't make it that night, it's available under the under the Spike Camp membership. Enough of that stuff. Let's get into the sprint intervals and building endurance. 1, I want to talk about why it's important for endurance athletes to be sprinting, and then 2, I want to talk about progressions to sprints, because you can't just go from not sprinting at all to sprinting for your workouts. That's a recipe for injury, and I would not be doing my job if I had you get injured on something that I recommend. As far as performance goes, it is a piece of the endurance puzzle. You're not going to be doing it year round. You're not going to be doing it a ton. You're looking at maybe 5 or 10% of your yearly running volume is going to be from sprints, but it is definitely important. It's a part to the whole for rucking. People are going to get stronger simply because you're putting a heavy pack on your back, but in the grand scheme of things, rucking is not a strength building activity, because you're not putting enough weight on your back to where you can only ruck for maybe 20 seconds to a minute. Whereas these sprints, you're going to stimulate the type 2 muscle fibers with the intensity of the sprint, so you're going to create more tissue resiliency for when you do actually have to ruck with a heavy pack, whether you're packing in, packing out, or hopefully packing out an animal. Maybe your goal isn't rucking, but if you're trying to get faster, just so you can be faster for running after your kids, you're going to have to sprint in order to do that, because again, jogging and going for light runs, it's not the same muscle fibers that you're stimulating. We'll take Usain Bolt, for example, with his overall training I touched on earlier, where it's parts of the whole. Bolt did maybe 10 to 30% of sprinting workouts for his overall training. The rest of the time he was working on the different components of sprinting. So relating that back to rucking again, rucking you're using a heavy pack. You need to have that tissue resiliency to handle that heavy pack for a long period of time. Rucking itself will build that to a point, but the number 2 reason why soldiers in the U.S. are not ready for missions is because of low back pain due to rucking. So if you can get better at rucking without actually having to ruck all year long, and as far as the injury prevention goes, that's where I would lean towards. And then intensity is not a substitute for duration when wanting to build capacity is another piece I want to talk about with the performance puzzle. With that statement, you cannot get away with only doing sprints. If you don't want to do zone 2 training or zone 3 intervals, you can't just do sprints, because yes, it is going to help your overall aerobic capacity a little bit, and it does not help it enough to justify only doing sprints, because you can fit a lot amount of work in a little bit of time. So you still need to do your zone 2 training, your zone 3 threshold training, but again, you're not missing a ton when you sprinkle in some sprints for your workouts. As far as injury prevention goes, I touched on it earlier, your sprinting does build the tissue resiliency. It's similar to the heavy lifting in the weight room. You can build muscular endurance with weights. You can build muscular endurance with light jogs and zone 2 jogs, zone 2 anything, but it's not the same muscle fibers that you're stimulating when it comes to going all out for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or even up to a minute. So you got to make sure that you are getting some sprints in, because as a hunter, as a Western hunter especially, you're going to be doing a lot of hiking while you're hunting, but if you're running to get in shape, it's a lot of repetitive load of the same load over and over and over again. Whereas the sprints, you can get a lot of work done in a short period of time. You're reducing the amount of steps that you're taking, so you're still building that capacity. Again, not as much as you would if you're doing zone 2 training or zone 3 training, but you're still building that capacity a little bit, and you're also getting a little injury prevention piece in there as well. If you can't work out because of an IT band issue or a lower leg issue or a low back issue because you continue to hammer endurance, that is more performance inhibiting than you throwing in sprints in a 4-week phase and you being worried about not building your overall aerobic engine because you're not doing zone 3 training or zone 2 training. You need to stay injury free in order to hunt hard. So throwing in those sprints every once in a while to give your body a break from the repetitive loading of zone 2 and zone 3 stuff, that's the injury prevention piece. As far as life goes, I see it often in the clinic because I'm still working in the clinic. Most people, you have 2 categories of injuries. You have the repetitive overuse injury, work like a cashier who's constantly reaching to the right. That's the overuse injury, or a runner who really doesn't do a ton of lifting. They're going to run into an overuse injury at some point. But then you've got mom and dad who have to sprint after their kids, the total opposite end of the spectrum. And usually that's where injury happens, like significant injury happens, where someone might tear an ACL, or someone might damage their meniscus, or someone might sprain their ankle. It's usually not on a low intensity, like chill run after your kid. It's usually the kids running out to the street and you got to sprint. So being a parent there is also an athletic component to being a parent. And if you can train that in the gym, so that way when you do have to run after your kid that one time to save him from going out in the middle of the street, you're not going to injure yourself and pull a hamstring. I still remember the day my dad, he might be watching this. We were paintballing for a bachelor party. This was years ago. I was in grade school, but we were paintballing for a bachelor party, and he made a mad dash to get behind some brush because he was being shot at. And I remember him screaming out when he pulled his hamstring. And he was on the couch for at least a week. I'm pretty sure he had to keep working in the middle of the week, but he was hobbling along. His hamstring was all bruised up. But again, that's one of those examples where he wasn't walking to the next brush pile. He wasn't lightly jogging to the next brush pile. He was sprinting to the next brush pile, and that's when he had that significant injury. So being mindful of that with your training, so that way, if in life, even if you're not a hunter, like you're listening to this and you're not a big hunter or a Western hunter, life requires you to develop a lot of force production in a short amount of time. All right, so progressions for your sprints. In the Spike Camp membership, I post the workout. That's the workout that I do to get ready for each fall. So with that progression, I usually have, like the first couple months, it's mostly zone 2 stuff. And then after that, after month 3 or 4, I'll sprinkle in some zone 3, and then I'll go to zone 4, and then I'll throw in some zone 5 training in each phase. So each phase is usually 4 to 6 weeks. So that after 3 or 4 months, I'll do a 4-week phase of zone 3. Then the next phase is going to be a 4-week phase of zone 4, and then the next 4-week phase is going to be zone 5, and then I'll just cycle through that. Yes, I'm missing the boat on not doing a ton of zone 3 stuff, but my goal is to be injury-free by the time I hit the woods, so I'm not too concerned about that small length of time that I'm not doing zone 3 training. That's all I've got for tonight. I got a question here. If you have asthma and you don't have an inhaler, I would be shocked. But if you do have an inhaler, bring that with you while you're running. Bring it with you during your workout if you're working out outside, or if you're working out on the treadmill, have it on the treadmill with you. But definitely, it's the timing of it. So some people, they do it just before, like when they come into the clinic, they'll do it just before they come in, like while they're in the waiting room, and they're fine throughout the session. Some people, it takes 15 or 20 minutes for it to truly kick in. So play with the timing of when you take your inhaler, if you have one. If you don't, talk to your primary care and get one. As far as the sprints go, since we're talking about that, kind of just sparked something else. As far as your sprints go, it's not something that you're trying to really fatigue out the muscles where you feel significant burn. Everybody seems to want to, like, the harder the workout and the more gassed you are, the better the workout was. That's not really the case, especially with sprints, especially with like heavy lifting, reps 6 or less. If you're doing hang cleans or snatches or anything like that, where you're trying to develop a lot of power, you want a lot of time in between your sets. You want a lot of time in between your sprints. Like when I say a lot of time, I'm talking 3 to 5 minutes. Like you might sprint for 30 seconds, 20 or 30 seconds, and then you're taking 5 minutes to hang out and keep walking, keep the blood flowing, but you're not doing sprint repeats where you're sprinting for 30 seconds, then you're resting for a minute, then sprinting for 30 seconds, then resting for a minute. You've got to give your body time in between those sets to fully recover the muscles and then go hard again, so that way it's a true sprint. But all right, guys, thank you for tuning in. It's been a while since I've done a live, so these are going to be a weekly thing now. I've got themes going on for each week, so these will be a weekly thing. You guys have a great rest of your Friday night, and if you're in Wisconsin, have a safe rest of your 9-day season. And everybody else that's out west, keep on getting after it. Peace out.